Well, welcome back to our series of lectures in TEP023. This is our second week and we are completing Topic 1 and looking at the negative integers. Remember last week we looked at positive integers, and remember that an integer was a whole number. It could be positive or negative, and it included 0. Now what we need to realise is that in everyday life we actually deal with positive and negative numbers constantly. For instance, every time you look at a bank statement you are interpreting a credit as a positive number which adds to your bank balance. A debit can be considered as a negative number and it is subtracted from the bank balance. So what we have here is a bank statement for some very lucky person who has an existing balance of $3,280.57. That person, and let us call that person Jake, has a job that gives him a weekly salary of $578.45, which gets paid into his bank account and goes into his credit column and then is added to the balance. And once it's added to the balance changes and becomes $3,859.02. Now you can do that with your calculator and all the calculations on this balance using your calculator. Now Jake has recently bought himself a little home unit and he has a bank loan on that, and the bank will debit his account $500 every fortnight to cover the mortgage on his unit. So because it's a debit, it's going to be subtracted from his balance. So his new balance after the debit is removed or taken from his bank account becomes $3,359.02. There was a little bit of a problem in the unit. A couple of the fans didn't work and Jake needed to call in an electrician who charged him $258.76 to replace the fans and do the wiring. And of course, when Jake paid his electrician, the money was debited from his account. So we now need to subtract $258.76 from the account. So his new balance now becomes $3,100.26. Jake had an old bicycle he needed to get rid of. There wasn't room for it in the unit, and anyway he wanted to buy a new one, so he sold his bicycle on eBay and gained $275 on the sale, put it into his account, it went into the credit column, and of course bumped up his balance, was added to his balance, so it became $3,375.26. So he's got a nice healthy little balance. So let's leave Jake now to get on with his life, and we'll move on to another scenario where we're going to have a look at temperatures, because that's another place where we use positive and negative numbers. Now, temperatures below 0. What was 0? 0 degrees centigrade is the temperature at which water freezes. But sometimes the daytime temperature at places like Thredbo will be below 0 degrees. So let's look at our temperature here. Daytime temperature at Thredbo is 4 degrees below 0. Well, we can actually write that as a negative number. We can write it as negative 4 degrees centigrade. Overnight, the minimum temperature drops another 12 degrees centigrade. So what then is the overnight minimum temperature? Well, the temperature in the day was -4, and then it drops another 12 degrees. Well, that makes the minimum overnight temperature -4 subtract 12 degrees, it's -16 degrees centigrade. The next day, the temperature rises to a maximum of 2 degrees centigrade, so it's now above zero, so the water in the puddles is going to begin to thaw. We've got a positive temperature. What's the difference between the overnight minimum and the maximum temperature on the second day? Well, to find the difference between the two, it's got to be 2 subtract the minimum temperature of the previous night, which was -16. And the difference between the two, you've probably already figured it out, it's 18 degrees. And so what that means is that if we've got this double negative here, 2 subtract -16, it actually means 2 plus 16, 18 degrees centigrade. Now we can show that quite nicely on a number line. I'll just make myself a little bit of room here, draw in a nice horizontal line, which is my number line, and I'm going to mark off 2 degrees centigrade there, which was my maximum temperature on the second day. There's 0 degrees, and we're going to count down to -16 degrees, so -2, -4, -6, -8, -10, let's write that one in, -12, -14, there's -16. The difference between 2 and -16 is 18 degrees. Let's add them. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 degrees. And the final scenario where I want to talk about positive and negative numbers is when we consider sea level. So we've got a little picture here. It's a nice passenger ship there at sea level, which we can think of as 0. And then above the passenger ship, we've got a little number scale going up in 5-metre gradations, and at 20 metres above the height of sea level is 2 lovely seagulls making quite a lot of squawking noise. But underneath the ship and counting down in our 5-metre gradations, we can think of this as -5 metres below sea level, -10 metres below sea level, -15 metres below sea level. So at -10 metres we have a couple of fish. The seagulls see the fish. So we're asked to describe what is happening if the movements of the seagulls can be described as 20 subtract 30 plus 15. Now let's have a think about that initial 20. It's the position of the seagulls when they see the fish. So that's where they're starting. -30. Well, that's when they dive down 30 metres to the level of the fish. Then we've got plus 15. Well, that means the seagulls gone back up 15 metres. What's happened to the fish? Well, they've gobbled up the fish, they've got big heavy tummies. They actually managed to get out of the water, but only to the top of the passenger ship, where they're probably sitting and annoying the passengers. So the seagulls have ended up here on top of the ship, squawking away. So what's the answer to this problem? Where have they finished? At what level? Well, they've actually finished at 5 metres. So let's have a look at the problem. 20 minus 30 plus 15. We can say 20 subtract 30, or starting at 20 going back 30, we end up at negative 10. There's negative 10. That was the position of the gulls when they ate the fish. So negative 10 plus that 15. Notice that this line is exactly equal to this line of working, and so our next little bit of working is negative 10 plus 15, so that's the seagulls moving from the position of the fish back up to 15 metres to the top of the boat, and they finish up at 5 metres. Well, there are about 3 different scenarios in everyday life that we can think about where we use positive and negative numbers. And on this page we've also used some of the rules that we're going to actually need to solve addition and subtraction of positive and negative numbers, which we're going to look at on our next page.